The morning mist hung heavy over Windsor Castle as Sergeant William Thompson adjusted his red ceremonial tunic for what he believed would be another routine day of royal duty. At 28 years old, Thompson had served in the Royal Guard for 6 years, earning respect from his peers and superiors alike. His record was spotless, his dedication unwavering, and his loyalty to the Crown absolute. Thompson had grown up in a working-class family in Manchester, where his father worked in a textile mill, and his mother cleaned offices at night to make ends meet. When he was 16, young William watched the Queen's Golden Jubilee on their small television, mesmerized by the pageantry and dignity of the Royal Guards. That moment sparked a dream that would shape his entire life. He enlisted in the British Army at 18, specifically requesting assignment to the Household Division with hopes of eventually joining the elite Royal Guard. The path had not been easy. Thompson endured grueling training, strict discipline, and countless hours of ceremonial drill practice. He learned to stand motionless for hours in all weather conditions, maintaining perfect posture while tourists photographed him and occasionally tried to make him laugh or react. Through it all, he never wavered in his commitment to serving the royal family with honor and distinction. On this particular morning in late autumn, Thompson was assigned to the inner courtyard detail, a position reserved for the most trusted guards. The role required him to monitor access to the private royal quarters and ensure the security of family members during their daily activities. It was considered a privilege among the guards, a sign that leadership had complete confidence in his abilities and judgment. As Thompson took his position near the grand entrance, he noticed unusual activity in the corridors. Palace staff moved with increased urgency, whispering among themselves in hushed tones. Something was different about this day, though he could not yet identify what had changed. The atmosphere felt charged with tension, like the moments before a thunderstorm breaks. King Charles had been residing at Windsor more frequently in recent weeks, preferring the relative privacy and tranquility it offered compared to Buckingham Palace. Thompson had observed the king during his morning walks in the gardens, noting how he seemed preoccupied and deep in thought. There were rumors among the staff about increased security briefings and private meetings with government officials, but royal protocol demanded that guards remain focused on their duties rather than palace gossip. Around mid-morning, Thompson received an unexpected radio communication directing him to report to the duty officer immediately. This was highly unusual during an active shift, and Thompson felt a knot of concern forming in his stomach. He had done nothing wrong, followed every protocol to the letter, and maintained the highest standards of conduct. Yet something in the tone of the message suggested this was not a routine matter. Walking through the familiar corridors toward the duty office, Thompson passed portraits of previous monarchs and countless artifacts that represented centuries of British history. These walls had witnessed countless moments of triumph and crisis, and he wondered what role he might be about to play in the ongoing story of the monarchy. The duty office was located in one of the older sections of the castle, where modern security equipment sat alongside medieval stone walls. As Thompson approached the heavy oak door, he could hear muffled voices inside engaged in what sounded like an intense discussion. He knocked twice, as protocol required, and waited for permission to enter. When the door opened, Thompson found himself facing not only the duty officer, but also several individuals he did not recognize. They wore dark suits and carried themselves with the bearing of government officials or intelligence personnel. The atmosphere in the room was tense, and Thompson immediately sensed that whatever was about to happen would change everything he thought he knew about his role and his future. The duty officer, a veteran sergeant major whom Thompson respected greatly, looked uncomfortable as he gestured for Thompson to take a seat. This informal approach was unlike anything Thompson had experienced in his military career, where most interactions followed strict hierarchical protocols. The deviation from normal procedure only heightened his sense that something significant was unfolding. One of the suited men stepped forward and introduced himself as representing palace security, though he provided no specific title or department. He explained that certain irregularities had come to their attention regarding Thompson's recent activities and associations. The accusations were vague but serious, involving potential breaches of security protocols and questionable contacts outside the palace. Thompson listened in stunned silence as the allegations unfolded. According to the investigation, He had allegedly been in contact with individuals who posed potential security risks to the royal family. There were suggestions of unauthorized meetings, suspicious financial transactions, and possible connections to foreign entities interested in palace operations. The accusations struck Thompson like physical blows. His entire adult life had been dedicated to serving the crown with absolute integrity. The suggestion that he might betray that trust was not only false but deeply personal. Everything he had worked for, every sacrifice he had made to reach this position was suddenly under threat from allegations he could not understand or explain. Thompson's mind raced as he tried to process the accusations being leveled against him. Each allegation seemed more impossible than the last, yet the serious expressions on the faces surrounding him made it clear this was no misunderstanding that could be quickly resolved. The men in suits had files, photographs, and what appeared to be documented evidence of activities Thompson knew he had never engaged in. When given the opportunity to respond, Thompson maintained his composure despite the emotional turmoil churning inside him. He categorically denied each accusation, providing detailed accounts of his whereabouts and activities during the times in question. His responses were met with skeptical glances and knowing looks between the investigators, as if they had expected exactly these denials. The lead investigator produced a series of photographs that allegedly showed Thompson meeting with unknown individuals in various London locations. The images were grainy and taken from considerable distances, making positive identification difficult. Thompson studied each photograph carefully, recognizing none of the people shown and unable to recall being in several of the locations during the specified times. More disturbing were financial records that purported to show unusual deposits into an account bearing Thompson's name and personal details. The amounts were significant enough to raise serious questions about their source, yet Thompson had never seen this account before and certainly had never received any unexplained income. His actual financial situation was modest, consisting of his military salary and small savings account that barely covered his basic expenses. As the interrogation continued, Thompson began to realize the sophisticated nature of what appeared to be an elaborate setup. Someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to create a false narrative about his activities and loyalties. The question that haunted him was why anyone would target a relatively junior member of the Royal Guard, and who possessed the resources and access necessary to fabricate such convincing evidence. The duty officer, who had known Thompson personally for several years, seemed increasingly uncomfortable with the proceedings. Thompson caught him shooting sympathetic glances during particularly aggressive questioning, suggesting that even those who knew him well were struggling to reconcile these accusations with the man they thought they knew. After 3 hours of intense questioning, Thompson was informed that he was being suspended from all duties pending a full investigation. His security clearances were immediately revoked, his access to palace grounds terminated, and his service weapon confiscated. The swift and comprehensive nature of these actions suggested that decisions about his fate had been made before the interrogation even began. Thompson was escorted from the palace under the watchful eyes of colleagues who had been his friends and comrades just hours earlier. The shame and humiliation were overwhelming, not because of any wrongdoing on his part, but because of how the situation must appear to others. Years of building trust and reputation were being destroyed by accusations he could not understand or defend against. Outside the palace gates, Thompson found himself alone on the street in civilian clothes, carrying only his personal belongings in a small bag. The contrast with his morning routine could not have been more stark. Hours earlier, he had been a trusted guardian of the monarchy. Now he was an unemployed former soldier under investigation for serious security breaches. The first person Thompson thought to contact was his sister Sarah, who worked as a nurse in London. She had always been his closest confidant and strongest supporter throughout his military career. When he called her from a public phone booth, struggling to explain what had happened, her immediate response was disbelief, followed by fierce protective anger. Sarah insisted that Thompson come to her apartment immediately, where they could discuss the situation away from any potential surveillance or interference. She had always been the practical one in their family, and Thompson hoped her clear thinking might help him understand what was happening and how to respond. During the journey to Sarah's apartment, Thompson tried to piece together any clues that might explain how he had become a target. He reviewed his recent interactions with civilians, his communications, his activities outside of work, and his financial transactions. Nothing seemed unusual or suspicious from his perspective. Yet someone had clearly been monitoring his life closely enough to construct this elaborate deception. The more Thompson thought about the evidence presented against him, the more convinced he became that this was not a case of mistaken identity or misinterpreted activities. The sophistication of the setup suggested deliberate targeting by individuals with significant resources and inside knowledge of palace operations. This was not the work of random criminals or foreign agents operating from outside the system. Thompson began to consider the possibility that the real threat to royal security might come from within, the very institutions charged with protecting the monarchy. If someone with inside access wanted to eliminate a particular guard, creating false evidence of disloyalty would be an effective method that would also serve to discredit any future claims of innocence. As his train approached London, Thompson realized that clearing his name would require more than simply denying the accusations. He would need to identify who had targeted him and why, uncover the methods used to fabricate evidence against him, and somehow prove his innocence in a system that already seemed convinced of his guilt. The task ahead seemed impossible, but Thompson's military training had taught him never to surrender without a fight. The afternoon sun was setting as Thompson climbed the stairs to his sister's apartment, carrying with him not only the burden of false accusations, but also a growing determination to uncover the truth. Whatever forces had conspired against him had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated his resolve and his unwillingness to accept defeat when his honor and integrity were at stake. Sarah's small apartment in Camden became Thompson's sanctuary and headquarters as he began the seemingly impossible task of proving his innocence. Her kitchen table was soon covered with notebooks, copied documents, and a timeline Thompson was constructing of his activities over the past several months. Sarah, despite working long shifts at the hospital, devoted every free moment to helping her brother analyze the evidence and develop a strategy for clearing his name. The first breakthrough came when Thompson remembered his habit of keeping detailed personal journals, a practice he had maintained since joining the military. These handwritten records contained daily entries about his activities, thoughts, and observations, including precise times and locations that could potentially contradict the fabricated evidence against him. Sarah helped him cross-reference these entries with the allegations, and patterns began to emerge that supported his claims of innocence. More importantly, Thompson's journals contained observations about unusual activities he had witnessed around the palace in recent weeks. He had noted increased meetings between palace security officials and unknown individuals, changes in protocol that seemed unnecessary, and conversations he had overheard that suggested tensions within the security apparatus. At the time, these observations had seemed like routine palace business, but in light of recent events, they took on new significance. Thompson decided to reach out to Marcus Webb, a fellow royal guard who had been his closest friend during their training and early service years. Webb had transferred to a different unit 6 months earlier, but maintained contacts throughout the palace security structure. When Thompson called him from a secure phone, Webb's reaction was immediate concern mixed with disbelief at the accusations. Webb agreed to meet Thompson at a quiet pub in South London, far from any palace-connected establishments where they might be recognized or overheard. During their conversation, Webb revealed that Thompson was not the first guard to face sudden accusations and suspension in recent months. 2 other long-serving members had been quietly removed under similar circumstances, though their cases had been kept confidential to avoid damaging morale. This revelation transformed Thompson's understanding of his situation. Rather than being an isolated incident targeting him personally, his case appeared to be part of a larger pattern of eliminating specific guards from palace service. The question became what connected him to the other victims, and who would benefit from their removal. Webb shared additional disturbing information about changes in palace security, procedures that had been implemented gradually over the past year. New personnel had been brought in at senior levels, often replacing long-serving officers who had announced early retirement or transferred to other positions. The changes had been presented as modernization efforts, but some guards had privately expressed concerns about the rapid pace of transformation. Thompson began to suspect that his removal was connected to something he had witnessed or discovered during his duties. even if he had not recognized its significance at the time. He spent hours reviewing his journal entries, looking for any incident or observation that might have made him a target for elimination from palace service. The answer came when Thompson remembered a late-night incident from 3 weeks earlier. He had been on duty in the inner courtyard when he observed several individuals in civilian clothes entering the palace through a service entrance normally used only by maintenance staff. The group had been escorted by a senior security official Thompson recognized, but did not know personally. What had struck Thompson as unusual was the time of the meeting. Well after normal business hours and the secretive manner in which the visitors had been brought into the palace. His training had taught him to note such irregularities, and he had made a detailed entry in his journal about the incident, including descriptions of the individuals and the approximate time of their arrival and departure. Thompson now realized that this observation might have marked him as a potential security risk in the eyes of whoever was orchestrating these clandestine meetings. If the gatherings were unauthorized or involved activities that could not withstand scrutiny, then any guard who had witnessed them would represent a potential threat to the operation. Sarah helped Thompson research the timing of his colleagues' suspensions and discovered that both had occurred shortly after periods when they would have been assigned to duties that might have provided them with similar opportunities to observe unusual activities. The pattern suggested a systematic effort to remove guards who might have witnessed something they were not supposed to see. Armed with this new understanding, Thompson began to develop a plan for exposing what appeared to be a conspiracy within palace security. However, he quickly realized that approaching official channels would be futile if the corruption extended to senior levels of the security apparatus. He needed independent allies who could investigate the situation without alerting those responsible. Thompson remembered reading about investigative journalists who had exposed government corruption in the past, and he began researching reporters who specialized in security and intelligence matters. He was looking for someone with the credibility and resources necessary to pursue a story of this magnitude, but also someone who would be willing to risk their career by challenging powerful institutions. The choice he settled on was Emma Richardson, a veteran investigative reporter for The Guardian, who had built her reputation exposing misconduct in government agencies. Richardson had a track record of protecting sources and pursuing stories that other journalists considered too dangerous or controversial to investigate. When Thompson finally made contact with Richardson through secure channels, her initial reaction was skeptical. Claims of conspiracy within royal security were exactly the kind of allegations that could destroy a journalist's credibility if they proved unfounded. However, Thompson's detailed evidence and the corroborating information from Webb convinced her that the story deserved serious investigation. Richardson agreed to meet with Thompson and begin a careful investigation of his claims, but she warned him that exposing the truth would likely require months of work and considerable personal risk for everyone involved. The forces they were challenging had demonstrated their willingness to destroy careers and reputations to protect their interests. Emma Richardson's investigation began with careful verification of Thompson's claims and background. She spent weeks researching his military record, interviewing former colleagues, and examining the evidence that had been used to justify his suspension. Her findings confirmed Thompson's assertion that the allegations against him were fabricated, but proving this would require exposing the sophisticated network responsible for the deception. Richardson's breakthrough came when she identified financial irregularities in the palace security budget that coincided with the timeline of guard suspensions. Through careful analysis of public records and confidential sources within government accounting offices, she discovered that significant funds had been diverted from normal security operations to undisclosed projects overseen by a small group of senior officials. The journalist's investigation revealed that the mysterious meetings Thompson had witnessed were part of a larger operation involving private security contractors who were being granted unprecedented access to palace operations. These contractors were not subject to the same oversight and accountability measures that governed regular palace security, creating opportunities for corruption and abuse that would be impossible within the traditional system. Richardson learned that the private contractors were connected to a company called Sovereign Protection Services, which had been founded by former intelligence officers with questionable backgrounds. The company had secured lucrative government contracts through political connections rather than competitive bidding processes, and their role in palace security had expanded rapidly, without proper parliamentary oversight. The removal of experienced guards like Thompson was part of a deliberate strategy to eliminate potential witnesses to the contractors' activities and replace them with personnel who would be more compliant with the new arrangements. The fabricated evidence against the guards served a dual purpose. It discredited them as potential whistleblowers while justifying their removal from positions where they might observe sensitive operations. Thompson's case was particularly threatening to the conspirators because his detailed journals provided a written record of activities that were supposed to remain secret. His habit of documenting everything he observed made him a dangerous witness who could potentially provide evidence of wrongdoing to investigators or journalists seeking to expose the operation. Richardson's investigation also uncovered connections between sovereign protection services and foreign interests that raised serious questions about national security. The company had received funding from shell corporations linked to hostile foreign governments, suggesting that the palace security operation might be compromised by external influences seeking to gather intelligence on the royal family. As Richardson gathered evidence, she became aware that her own activities were being monitored by unknown individuals. She noticed the same faces appearing in different locations where she conducted interviews. Her phone calls seemed to be intercepted, and her apartment showed signs of having been searched during her absence. The surveillance confirmed that she was investigating something significant enough to warrant these extreme measures. Meanwhile, Thompson continued his own investigation with the help of Webb and other sympathetic guards who remained in service. They developed a network of informal communication that allowed information to flow between current and former personnel without detection by the corrupted security apparatus. This underground network proved invaluable in gathering intelligence about ongoing operations and identifying additional victims of the conspiracy. Thompson learned that the private contractors had been granted access to sensitive areas of the palace that were normally restricted to the most trusted personnel. They were conducting what they described as security assessments, but their activities appeared to include gathering detailed intelligence about royal family routines, security procedures, and communication systems. The scope of the operation became clearer when Thompson discovered that similar contractors had been introduced into other government facilities and military installations under the same modernization initiatives. The palace was not an isolated target, but part of a broader infiltration of British security institutions by private interests with questionable loyalties. Richardson's investigation reached a critical point when she obtained internal documents from Sovereign Protection services that detailed their activities and objectives. The documents revealed that the company was being paid not only for security services but also for intelligence gathering and influence operations, designed to shape government policy in favor of their foreign sponsors. The evidence showed that the conspiracy extended far beyond the removal of a few guards and involved systematic compromise of British national security institutions. The royal family, rather than being protected by these arrangements, was being exposed to unprecedented risks from foreign intelligence operations disguised as security improvements. Thompson realized that his personal vindication was now secondary to the larger national security implications of what they had uncovered. The evidence they had gathered could expose a threat to the monarchy and the broader British government that demanded immediate action from the highest levels of authority. However, presenting this evidence through normal channels remained problematic, because the conspiracy included individuals within those very institutions. Richardson and Thompson needed to find a way to reach decision-makers who were not compromised by the operation and who had the authority to take decisive action against the threat. The solution came when Richardson identified a senior civil servant in the cabinet office who had been expressing private concerns about the expansion of private security contractors in government operations. Sir James Whitfield had served in various security-related positions for over 30 years and maintained a reputation for integrity and independence that made him a potential ally. Richardson arranged a secret meeting with Whitfield through intermediaries who could vouch for her credibility and the significance of her investigation. The meeting would represent a crucial test of whether the evidence they had gathered was sufficient to convince someone in authority that immediate action was necessary to protect both the monarchy and national security. As the date for the meeting approached, both Richardson and Thompson understood that they were about to cross a point of no return. Once they presented their evidence to government authorities, they would become direct threats to powerful interests that had already demonstrated their willingness to destroy anyone who opposed them. The meeting with Sir James Whitfield took place in a secure conference room, deep within the Cabinet Office building, surrounded by multiple layers of security that ensured their conversation could not be monitored or intercepted. Whitfield, a distinguished man in his early 60s with steel-gray hair and penetrating blue eyes, listened intently as Richardson and Thompson presented their evidence of the conspiracy within palace security. Whitfield's reaction to their presentation was more serious than either Richardson or Thompson had anticipated. Rather than expressing surprise at their revelations, he acknowledged that their evidence confirmed suspicions that had been growing within certain circles of the intelligence community. The infiltration of palace security was part of a broader pattern of foreign interference that had been detected in multiple government institutions. The senior civil servant revealed that Thompson's case had actually triggered an internal investigation when his suspension had been reported through routine channels to the Cabinet Office. The speed and unusual circumstances of his removal had raised red flags with security officials who were already monitoring the activities of private contractors in sensitive government facilities. Whitfield explained that Sovereign Protection Services was known to intelligence agencies as a front organization for foreign intelligence operations, but gathering sufficient evidence to take legal action against them had proven extremely difficult. The company operated through legitimate business channels and maintained careful legal compliance while conducting activities that served hostile foreign interests rather than British security needs. The evidence that Richardson and Thompson had gathered was crucial because it provided concrete documentation of specific illegal activities rather than the circumstantial evidence that intelligence agencies had been able to collect through their own monitoring efforts. Thompson's detailed journals and Richardson's financial analysis created a paper trail that could support criminal prosecutions and parliamentary investigations. However, Whitfield warned them that exposing the conspiracy would require careful coordination with law enforcement and intelligence agencies to avoid alerting the perpetrators before all evidence could be secured and all participants identified. The operation they had uncovered was likely just one component of a larger foreign intelligence network that needed to be dismantled systematically to prevent future threats. Thompson learned that his personal vindication would come as part of a much larger counterintelligence operation that was already being planned based on the evidence he and Richardson had provided. His case would serve as the foundation for exposing the entire network, but he would need to remain patient while investigators worked to identify all participants and gather additional evidence. The meeting with Whitfield also revealed why Thompson and his colleagues had been specifically targeted for removal. Intelligence analysis had identified them as potential witnesses to activities that could expose the foreign operation if properly investigated. Their detailed knowledge of normal palace security procedures made them particularly dangerous to the conspirators because they could identify deviations from established protocols. Whitfield arranged for Thompson to be placed under protective surveillance while the investigation proceeded, recognizing that his safety could be at risk once the conspirators realized that their activities were being exposed. Richardson was also provided with security protection and advised to suspend her independent investigation while official agencies took over the case. The counterintelligence operation that followed was one of the most significant domestic security investigations in recent British history. Over the course of several weeks, law enforcement and intelligence agencies conducted coordinated raids on Sovereign Protection Services facilities, arrested key personnel, and seized extensive documentation of their activities and foreign connections. The investigation revealed that the company had been operating under the direction of foreign intelligence services with the goal of gathering detailed intelligence about British government operations and potentially compromising key officials through blackmail or corruption. The infiltration of palace security was intended to provide access to information about royal family activities that could be used for diplomatic leverage or public embarrassment. Thompson watched the news coverage of the arrests and raids with a mixture of satisfaction and amazement at the scope of what they had uncovered. What had begun as his personal fight to clear his name had evolved into a major national security investigation that would have far-reaching implications for British intelligence and security procedures. The evidence gathered during the raids confirmed every aspect of Thompson's original claims and revealed additional activities that were even more serious than what Richardson had initially uncovered. The Foreign Intelligence Operation had been planning to use their access to palace security systems to gather intelligence that could be used to threaten or embarrass the royal family during sensitive diplomatic negotiations. King Charles himself was briefed on the investigation and its findings, including Thompson's role in exposing the conspiracy through his detailed observations and unwillingness to accept false accusations. The king's reaction was reportedly one of gratitude, mixed with concern about how foreign agents had been able to penetrate so deeply into palace security operations. The parliamentary investigation that followed revealed serious failures in oversight of private security contractors and led to new legislation requiring extensive background checks and ongoing monitoring of any private companies involved in government security operations. The reforms were designed to prevent similar infiltrations in the future while maintaining the flexibility that modern security operations required. Thompson's vindication came not through a quiet reversal of his suspension but through public recognition of his role in exposing a serious threat to national security. The false accusations against him were formally withdrawn, his security clearances restored, and his service record amended to reflect the heroic nature of his actions rather than the fabricated security concerns that had been used to remove him. However, Thompson's experience had changed his perspective on his military career and his relationship with the institutions he had served so faithfully. While he was gratified by his vindication and the recognition of his integrity, he had also seen how easily those same institutions could be manipulated by hostile forces and how vulnerable individual service members could be to false accusations and character assassination. The investigation also revealed the sophisticated methods that foreign intelligence services were using to infiltrate and compromise Western security institutions, raising broader questions about the adequacy of existing counterintelligence measures and the need for new approaches to protecting national security in an increasingly complex global environment. The aftermath of the investigation brought unexpected developments that transformed Thompson's life in ways he had never anticipated. Rather than simply returning to his previous position within the Royal Guard, he was approached by senior officials within the intelligence community who recognized the unique value of his observational skills and unwavering integrity under pressure. Thompson found himself at the center of discussions about reforming security procedures throughout government institutions, not as a victim of the conspiracy, but as an expert whose experience provided valuable insights into vulnerabilities that needed to be addressed. His detailed journals and systematic approach to documenting observations had proven invaluable to investigators, suggesting that similar practices could enhance security monitoring across multiple government facilities. The Cabinet Office offered Thompson a new position within a specialized unit responsible for monitoring and evaluating private security contractors working with government agencies. His role would involve conducting discrete assessments of contractor activities and identifying potential security risks before they could develop into serious threats. The position represented both recognition of his abilities and an opportunity to prevent similar infiltrations in the future. Emma Richardson's investigation had established her as one of the leading experts on foreign intelligence operations within British institutions, and she was invited to serve as a consultant to parliamentary committees reviewing security legislation. Her collaboration with Thompson had demonstrated the value of cooperation between journalists and government officials in exposing threats that might otherwise remain hidden. The relationship between Richardson and Thompson had evolved during their investigation, from professional cooperation to genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared commitment to protecting British institutions. Their partnership had proven that independent journalism and dedicated public service could work together effectively when facing threats that transcended traditional boundaries between media and government. King Charles requested a private meeting with Thompson to express his personal gratitude for the Guard's role in exposing the threat to palace security. During their conversation, the king acknowledged that Thompson's dedication to duty and refusal to accept false accusations had potentially prevented a serious compromise of royal family security that could have had devastating consequences for the monarchy. The king also revealed that the investigation had uncovered plans by foreign intelligence services to use their access to palace operations for gathering information that could be used to embarrass or blackmail members of the royal family. Thompson's actions had not only cleared his own name but had prevented what could have been a major scandal that might have damaged the reputation of the monarchy for years to come. Thompson's colleagues, who had also been falsely accused and removed from their positions, were similarly vindicated and offered opportunities to return to service or pursue new careers within the security community. The investigation had revealed that their removals had been part of the same systematic effort to eliminate potential witnesses to the foreign intelligence operation. Marcus Webb, who had risked his own career to support Thompson's investigation, was promoted to a senior position within palace security and tasked with implementing new procedures designed to prevent similar infiltrations. The reforms included enhanced background screening for all personnel, regular security audits of contractor activities, and improved communication between different levels of the security apparatus. The parliamentary hearings that followed the investigation provided Thompson with an opportunity to testify publicly about his experience and the lessons that could be learned from the conspiracy. His testimony was praised for its clarity and detailed analysis of how foreign agents had exploited weaknesses in existing security procedures to gain access to sensitive government facilities. Thompson's appearance before Parliament also served to publicly vindicate his character and demonstrate the falseness of the accusations that had been used to justify his removal from palace service. The detailed questioning by members of Parliament established clearly that he had been targeted, specifically because of his integrity and observational skills rather than any actual security concerns. The legislation that emerged from the parliamentary investigation included provisions for protecting government employees who report security concerns or unusual activities, recognizing that Thompson's case had demonstrated how easily honest public servants could be silenced through false accusations and character assassination. The new protections were designed to encourage reporting of suspicious activities without fear of retaliation. Thompson's decision about his future career required careful consideration of the various opportunities that had emerged from his experience. While he was grateful for the recognition and vindication he had received, he was also aware that his life had been permanently changed by the events of the past year, and that returning to routine duties might no longer provide the satisfaction it once had. The specialized position within the Cabinet Office offered intellectual challenges and the opportunity to contribute to national security in ways that went far beyond his original role as a royal guard. However, it would also require him to adapt to a very different environment and working relationships that were less structured than the military hierarchy he had known. Throughout his adult life, Thompson ultimately decided to accept the new position while maintaining his commission as a reserve officer, allowing him to contribute his experience to both military and civilian security operations. The arrangement provided him with the flexibility to pursue the investigative work that had proven so effective in exposing the foreign intelligence operation while remaining connected to the military community that had shaped his character and values. The transformation of Thompson's career from Royal Guard to security specialist represented not only personal vindication but also recognition of the evolving nature of national security threats in the modern world. His experience had demonstrated that traditional approaches to security needed to be supplemented with new methods and perspectives that could identify and counter sophisticated foreign intelligence operations. As Thompson prepared to begin his new responsibilities, he reflected on the journey that had brought him from false accusations and professional disgrace to recognition as a national security expert. The experience had been painful and frightening, but it had also revealed strengths and capabilities that he had not known he possessed. 2 years after the investigation concluded, Thompson had established himself as one of the most respected security analysts within the British government. Having successfully identified and prevented 3 additional foreign intelligence operations targeting various government institutions, his unique combination of military discipline, detailed observational skills, and hard-won understanding of how security systems could be compromised made him invaluable to the ongoing effort to protect British national interests. The specialized unit that Thompson had joined had grown into a significant department within the Cabinet Office, with responsibility for monitoring security contractors, conducting threat assessments, and developing new protective measures for government facilities. Thompson's role had evolved to include training other security personnel in advanced observation techniques and threat recognition, passing on the skills that had proven so effective in exposing the original conspiracy. Emma Richardson had continued her investigative journalism while serving as a consultant to government committees reviewing security legislation. Her collaboration with Thompson had produced a book about their investigation that became a bestseller and helped educate the public about the sophisticated methods being used by foreign intelligence services to penetrate Western institutions. The book's success had established Richardson as a leading authority on counterintelligence matters. The reforms implemented following the investigation had proven effective in preventing similar infiltrations, but they had also revealed the ongoing nature of the threat posed by foreign intelligence operations. Thompson's work had identified multiple attempts by various foreign services to establish operations within British institutions, demonstrating that the original conspiracy was part of a much larger and more persistent campaign. King Charles had maintained a personal interest in Thompson's career and had invited him to brief the royal family on security matters on several occasions. The king's support had been instrumental in Thompson's professional development and had helped establish the credibility of his new role within the security community. The relationship had evolved beyond gratitude for past service to genuine respect for Thompson's ongoing contributions to royal protection. Thompson's personal life had also been transformed by his experiences, as his reputation for integrity and competence had attracted attention from various quarters. He had received numerous job offers from private security companies and consulting firms, but had chosen to remain in government service where he felt he could make the most significant contribution to national security. The relationship with his sister Sarah had deepened during the crisis and its aftermath, as she had provided not only emotional support, but also practical assistance in organizing evidence and maintaining his morale during the darkest periods of the investigation. Sarah had taken pride in her brother's vindication and recognition, but had also helped him maintain perspective about the importance of family, relationships, and personal happiness alongside professional success. Marcus Webb had become one of Thompson's closest friends and collaborators, and their partnership had been crucial in implementing security reforms throughout the palace system. Webb's position within palace security and Thompson's role in the Cabinet Office created an effective communication channel that ensured continuous coordination between royal protection and broader national security efforts. The foreign intelligence network that had been exposed through Thompson's investigation had been dismantled systematically over the 2 years following the initial arrests. Intelligence agencies had used the evidence gathered during the original investigation to identify and neutralize similar operations in other countries, contributing to international counterintelligence efforts that had degraded the capabilities of hostile foreign services. Thompson had been invited to share his experience with security professionals in allied countries, helping to develop international cooperation in identifying and countering foreign intelligence operations. His presentations at conferences and training sessions had established him as a recognized expert whose insights were valued by security professionals throughout the democratic world. The parliamentary investigation that had followed the exposure of the conspiracy had resulted in comprehensive reforms of oversight procedures for private security contractors throughout the government. The new legislation had created multiple layers of scrutiny and accountability that made similar infiltrations much more difficult, while also providing better protection for government employees. who reported security concerns. Thompson's testimony before various parliamentary committees had been praised for its clarity and comprehensive analysis of the security vulnerabilities that had been exploited by foreign agents. His recommendations had been incorporated into new policies and procedures that had strengthened the overall security posture of British government institutions. The broader implications of the investigation had extended beyond security matters to include diplomatic consequences for the countries whose intelligence services had been involved in the operation. The evidence of foreign interference in British institutions had led to formal protests and sanctions that had damaged the relationships between Britain and several hostile nations. As Thompson looked back on the journey that had transformed his life from royal guard to national security expert, he recognized that the false accusations that had initially seemed like the end of his career had actually been the beginning of a much more significant contribution to his country's security. The experience had been painful and frightening, but it had also revealed capabilities and opportunities that he could never have imagined while standing guard at palace gates. The investigation had demonstrated the importance of individual integrity and courage in protecting democratic institutions from sophisticated threats that could not be countered through technology or bureaucratic procedures alone. Thompson's refusal to accept false accusations and his determination to uncover the truth had proven that individual citizens could make crucial differences in protecting national security when they possessed the courage to challenge powerful interests. Looking toward the future, Thompson understood that the threats facing British institutions would continue to evolve, and that new forms of vigilance and protection would be required to maintain the security of democratic government. His experience had taught him that effective security depended not only on sophisticated technology and procedures, but also on the dedication and integrity of individuals willing to sacrifice personal comfort for the greater good. The transformation of Thompson's life had become a symbol of how ordinary citizens could rise to extraordinary challenges when their values and commitment were tested by circumstances beyond their control. His story had inspired others within the security community and had contributed to a renewed appreciation for the importance of individual character in protecting the institutions that sustained democratic society.